Well, hey, Math 8, Mr. Erickson here. Hope you guys are having a good Monday so far, at least as good as Mondays can be. And then, of course, also, as they say in the Star Wars universe, or close to it, may the 4th be with you. All right, we're going to get into 5-4 here, Monday's notes, which is actually the first lesson in a new unit, our last unit, which is on graphs. If you've read the announcement for the week, I talked a little bit about that. Basically, different types of graph displays. We're going to answer some questions as well as eventually create our own, which will be pretty exciting. But let's go ahead and just look at the notes here today, which will help you guys get started with the assignment. So as you guys have been hearing in the news, data is often used to make educated decisions about all sorts of different types of things. So obviously, currently, a huge example would be COVID-19, right? If you've heard language such as flattening the curve, for example, that's a graph, right? That's looking at something on a graphical display. So obviously, it's used a lot of different places, right? And that's just one example. I mean, sports, medicine, politics. I mean, you name it. You're going to have some graphs that visually show data and statistics, and so it's basically a way just to kind of make the numbers more meaningful and to kind of represent them visually. And so so let's go ahead and kind of get into here the different types. So the different types we're going to look at here today. So bar graphs, or you could also double bar graphs, kind of would be in the same category. So note in Google Sheets, they will call this a column graph. Same thing though. It's used to show the frequency or how many per category, right? So how many people, like this example one here below, if you notice down here, this is an example of a bar graph. And so it shows the frequency, how many students like different particular snacks. So it looks like of the students, number of students here, 34 liked ice cream, 21 liked potato chips, 14 liked nachos, 8 liked cookies, right? So a way just to kind of visually show, oh, wow, the most of them liked ice cream, and that's, more than half, or that's more than double what liked nachos, probably more than triple what liked, how many liked cookies. So, you can kind of see just visually some of those relationships there between the different bars. So that's our first example. I guess for really quick on that, just kind of jumping down here. So from bar graphs, if I can talk this morning, it's Monday. From the bar graph, we can conclude things such as, once again, more students prefer ice cream than any other snack choices. You can start to compare, how many times one likes something than the other. Things like that. You could, if you want to, figure out how many total students were surveyed. Notice you add up all the bars, you get a total of 77 students, for example. And so just kind of like I did, there's several things there you could conclude, just kind of given that visual display. All right, that was our first type. Second type would be a line graph, or once again, same category would be a double line graph. So this is used to show trends over time. So think about kind of increasing, decreasing, staying steady. But the key here, really important to understand this, line graphs deal with how something changes over time. If you notice the favorite snack of students, that didn't have anything to do with time, right? Someone who picked ice cream might have said potato chips if it happened a week later, but we don't know that, right? It was just one time they gave the survey, that was it. A line graph, on the other hand, the second type we're looking at, is how something changes or trends change over time. And so let's look at, I guess we'll have to come down to example 3, actually. They're kind of out of order here, but this would be an example of a line graph. So this graph shows the change in a child's height over the years, or change over time. So notice here back in 2015, we're a little bit over 30 inches for the height for the child. 2016 goes up a little bit, and then it kind of jumps up. Probably the biggest change, right? The most that it jumped up would be between 2016 and 2017, right? That's that steepest slope, or the biggest increase there. Then it keeps increasing, but not quite as much. There's another fairly big increase, but not quite as much, 2018 and 2019. And then, of course, as time goes along, it looks like this child is growing, getting taller and taller. And we see that overall trend, right, even from the beginning, 2015, to the very end, 2020. And so that's kind of what this bottom part talks about, right? The child grew every year. So they obviously were always going up. There was always a positive slope. It never went down. He never shrunk. That would be kind of concerning probably for a child to do that. A child remaining the same height, 2019 to 2020. So it looks like there was a time there where it was flat there. So there was zero slope, right? It was a flat line, horizontal line. There's zero slope. And then the child had the biggest height gain between 2016 and 2017, as we talked about. That was the steepest slope. But that would be a line graph. And you can see it's as things change with regards to time. Okay. All right, last type here would be a circle graph. So circle graph is used to show the percentage of a category. So how big is something compared to the whole? The bar graph, if you notice, was good to compare how many liked ice cream versus potato chips, but we couldn't tell like what percentage liked ice cream out of the whole group, right? In fact, we had to kind of do a lot of work to add them all up to figure out there were even 77 total students that were surveyed. The circle graph kind of fixes that problem. So you can see the percentage of the total category or of the total. So it compares parts, so a category, to the whole or the total amount of all categories. And if it was that first example, would be the number of students, for example. So it usually gives percentages, not frequencies. So let's look at an example of that. Example 2 as an example of a circle graph here. The graph shows below the percentage of students who prefer each type of snack. So we actually have the same, I'm guessing here, the same, it looks like it, the same information that we had in the first example, example 1. We have an example 2, same data, right? Same numbers, but a different visual graphical display. So here we have what we call, once again, a circle graph or pie graph, as you might have heard it referred to. And now it's easy to compare, which is the biggest slice, which is the smallest slice. But more importantly, what's it's great for is realizing, look at this, like almost half, I would say almost half of that circle is blue, right? So almost half liked ice cream. Not quite, it's about 44%, 50% would be half, but you can see a pretty good portion, almost half, liked ice cream as their favorite. So there's things like that. You can also see a little more than a quarter preferred potato chips. Once again, this red section's about 1/4, of the pie there, or of the circle. And then there's some other things here we can figure out as well. Kind of using that little formula, you can actually figure out then how many students liked a certain thing. So like here, for example, we've got, let's see, the ice cream over the total equals the percentage over 100. So if we want to use I here as our X, right, our variable here. So how many students over the total 77 is equal to, we know it's 44.2% out of 100. So kind of like we did with proportions, actually, with probability not too long ago, about 2 weeks ago, I think it was. You'd cross multiply and solve for the variable. In this case, it's I or X, doesn't really matter. You end up getting 34.034 students. So you can kind of work backwards, figure out what that frequency actually was if you needed to. So otherwise, that pretty much sums it up. You guys will go and click on the assignment to complete, where you'll answer. I think it's a lot of just multiple choice questions, basically looking at different types of graphs, answering questions. I believe you do have multiple attempts, so you can go back. I think maybe just 2 though. I think you can go back, make sure you keep track of what you got right, what you got wrong, and then see if you can get a second opportunity on maybe some of those that you get wrong. But otherwise, we'll see you guys on Wednesday. Hope you guys have a great Monday, and we'll talk to you later.